Nagra, the
old Nagra, still kicking and weighing on your shoulders. No problem, not yet. Eddie Kramer, you recorded hours and hours, days and days of music. You took pictures of a lot of the musicians while they were in the studio. To begin somewhere, you just told us that you about House of the Rising Sun, the Animals, back in the early 60s. How long was it took to record the House of the Rising Sun?
I believe they came down from Birmingham at 9 o'clock in the morning, and they went in the studio, set up, and within 15 minutes they had the song on tape, and then they said, "We're going, see you later." And that became a big hit.
And what was your position there while that was being recorded? It was you recording it, or?
No, that wasn't me, but I later worked with the Animals bass player, Chaz Chandler, who was Jimi Hendrix's producer. That was my connection. And I did actually record the Animals at a later point in time at Olympic Studios.
Early in the
3 days of drugs and hell.
You told us about
that was what it was for me.
Session there.
Yeah, I was behind like this DR truck over there. Very similar. There was a big tractor trailer. I had one little corner in the back where I had two tape machines. It was no communication with the stage. It was all done with hand signals and great artists. People flying around from one part of the stage to the back, throwing things at me and say, "Hey, over here," you know. It was chaos. It was organized chaos. But it was amazing that we actually got the stuff there to come in and do the rock and roll. An awful lot of it was brilliant. And as first-time people like Joe Cocker, who was introduced to American audiences, a lot of people made their name from Woodstock. I mean, obviously Jimmy was the big star, and obviously he, musically, I think that's what he was hired for. He was at the pinnacle.
The connection from Chaz Chandler onto
so
Jimi
many
Hendrix.
bands made
tell me how you were introduced to
Woodstock,
Jimi Hendrix in the first place.
Fantastic performances. Yes, that's a strange story because the list goes on and on. I was the thing is, if you think about it, imagine that you are a decent band and you've got an opportunity to play at a place like this. You don't know what's going to go on, and all of a sudden you're on stage and there's like 500,000 people. That's twice the size of the town of Århus. So you better record him. That's pretty impressive. If you don't get your act together and play something good, then you're in the wrong business, my friend.
He died.
It was 3 days of drugs and hell.
Relationship.
That was what it was for me.
The two of you.
Yeah, I was behind. My relationship with like Jimmy this DR truck over there. Very similar. There was a big tractor trailer. I had one little corner in the back where I had two tape machines. Around to do those albums. No communication with the stage. It was all done with hand signals and people flying around from one part of the stage to the back, throwing things at me. Hey, over here, you know. It was chaos. It was organized chaos. But it was amazing that we actually got the stuff down on tape. An awful lot of it was brilliant. And first-time people like Joe Cocker, who was introduced to American audiences, a lot of people made their name from Woodstock. I mean, obviously Jimmy was the big star. Obviously, he musically, I think he was at the pinnacle.
Like when you did the
so many bands made
album,
their name from Woodstock.
One of the outstanding tracks
fantastic performances.
The Bob Dylan song all along the Watchtower. Do you remember the
list
session
goes on
when,
and on.
That was done? That song
the
was
thing
done?
is, if you think about it, imagine that you are a decent band and you've got an opportunity to play at a place like this. You don't know what's going to go on, and all of a sudden you're on stage and there's 500,000 people. That's twice the size of the town of Århus. He always had a That's pretty impressive. And if you don't get your act together and play something good, then you're in the wrong business, my friend. And All Along the Watchtower was definitely the best of them. It was the only song, I think, in Jimmy's career that, yes, it was a cover, but I think it cracked the top 10 as far as a single is concerned.
It was number one here, actually.
Yeah, I can believe that. So the fact is that it started off in England in late 67, early 68, before Jimmy came over to the States. And we cut the basic track in London at Olympic with Jimmy on acoustic guitar and Dave Mason on 12-string, Jimmy on 6-string acoustic, and Mitch on drums. And it was tough because there was some very tricky things that were going on with the timing of it that he was yelling at Mitch for, and he was very pissed off at Dave Mason for not getting the chords right, and eventually he got it together, and that track made it over to the US, and I finished it in the US with him at the record plant in New York City. It had quite an interesting history before it was actually finally finished. He spent a lot of time working on it. He played bass on that, which was also very unusual. It's got that lovely loping bass feel, and he was a very good bass player. But I think he really pissed off his own bass player. I think Noel didn't really like the fact that Jimmy played bass on that one.
You did a single with the Beatles, All You Need Is Love, Baby You're a Rich Man, but that was not your ball game. You came into it like accidentally, or how?
It wasn't so much an accident. It was really a question of the fact that the Beatles at the time were very busy over at EMI, and they couldn't get into their own studio, so they booked what they felt was the best independent studio in London, and that was us, Olympic. So we had a point to prove. You know, we wanted to prove that we could be at least as good as EMI, if not better, and that's what we did.
The Woodstock Festival, you were there. I remember the film when it came out. It was Woodstock, 3 days of peace, love and music. How was Woodstock for you?
It was 3 days of drugs and hell. That was what it was for me.
So where were you? Were sitting recording everything, or what?
Yeah, I was behind like this DR truck over there. Very similar. There was a big tractor trailer. I had one little corner in the back where I had 2 tape machines. No communication with the stage. It was all done with hand signals and people flying around from one part of the stage to the back, throwing things at me and say, hey, over here, you know. It was chaos. It was organized chaos. But it was amazing that we actually got the stuff down on tape.
And the music, hearing it today, it's still fantastic. Or what did you think of the music being played at the stage in Woodstock that time when you were there?
Well, an awful lot of it was brilliant, and first-time people like Joe Cocker, who was introduced to American audiences, a lot of people made their name from Woodstock. I mean, obviously Jimmy was the big star, and obviously musically, I think he was at the pinnacle. But so many bands made their name from Woodstock, from fantastic performances. Santana, the list goes on and on.
Do you have an idea how come those what they played was so fantastic under these circumstances?
Do I have an idea why?
Yeah.
Well,
it was very bad organized and everything, so they should have been pissed.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you think about it, imagine that you are a decent band and you've got an opportunity to play at a place like this. You don't know what's going to go on, and all of a sudden you're on stage and there's 500,000 people. That's twice the size of the town of Århus. That's pretty impressive. If you don't get your act together and play something good, then you're in the wrong business, my friend.
You mentioned Jimmy Page from... he was playing the guitar solo, and you really got me. You got into Led Zeppelin also. I think I could hear you say it's almost your favorite band. What was so great about working with Led Zeppelin?
Well, I would say, let me clarify that. I would say Led Zeppelin is my favorite rock band in the sense that they were the greatest rock and roll band by virtue of the fact the musicianship was so incredible, and, you know, this was the perfect confluence of great musicianship, great performance. I mean, you think of Robert Plant as a frontman, it doesn't get much better. Greatest rock drummer in the world, and one of the greatest rock and roll guitar players in the world, and one of the greatest bass players and arrangers in the world. So that's the reason they were world class.
What about nowadays? There's all this new equipment. You did it more or less like, well, we'll find a solution. Now there's a solution to everything. How do we find the music coming out on records today?
Well, that's the problem, that there's such an easy solution, and that I think musicians and bands have this opportunity to record anything, anywhere, anytime, in their basement, in their garage, which is great, and that's wonderful. Unfortunately, the lack of knowledge, of formal knowledge as to how to record properly is lacking, sadly lacking, I think. And Pro Tools is a wonderful storage medium, but I think in the wrong hands it could be a problem.
But are you saying back to primitive, or just learn to do your business better?
Yes, I think there's a good case to be made for learning to play your instrument really well and really understand. I mean, if you use the Led Zeppelin as the example, Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones were highly skilled professional musicians who knew precisely what to play, when to play it, and how to play it, and studied and worked and rehearsed hard. And so did Jimi Hendrix, for that matter. Even though he wasn't a school musician, he played that guitar every day, so he knew how to get the best out of his instrument. I hope that there are more bands out there like that today.
Could you mention any?
No, I said I hope that there are. I don't know if one can make Yes, I mean, there are a lot of very good, very professional bands, and there are a lot of great musicians out there. But you have to think about those times are very specifically different. The atmosphere in the business world was different. And it enabled these bands to become what they were. You know?
Do you find what is coming out today as interesting at all with the way everything is organized now?
I don't. I think a lot of the bands have a tendency to sound the same. There's this, what I call the brick wall approach to the sound. And if you took 10 top rock bands and put the CD on back to back, the levels are all the same, the compression's all the same, there seems to be very little room for individuality. Now, that's a sweeping generalization, I know that, but it's more often the case than not. There are some great individual acts, I think, but I mean, you know, let's look at it carefully. If you thought that the Red Hot Chili Peppers are a great band, and they are wonderful, don't get me wrong, how do they record? They record the old-fashioned way. They record analog. Their last album was analog. But this band is 20 years old now, so it's not exactly a contemporary band. So how many contemporary bands are there that of that stature, of U2, of Red Hot Chili Peppers? These bands have been around for a few years, you know. So,
what about your own skill, being the engineer? Do you have any one that you look up to who are really doing what you used to do better, or in a new way that you respect a lot?
I think there's a lot of great young engineers out there. It's very tough for them because they're caught in this world where, you know, the producer, the record company, the management team says, look, we don't have the money for analog. You've got to do all in Pro Tools. You've got to mix it in the box, and that is hard. I challenge anybody to mix something in the box and make it sound good. That's a problem for me.
And if any of them out there wants you, are you available for doing your old skills still?
Well, I mean, a lot of the bands that I work with hire me specifically because I can get them a vintage sound, but I still use analog tape, and I also use digital because I think that there is a way to combine the best of digital, the best of analog, and make the two worlds meet and join together, and so you get the best of both worlds. And that's how I do my records.
Pleasure talking to you, Mr. Eddie Kramer. I'm looking forward to go down and see your pictures because just came to town today. So
yeah, go to Gallery Filmen here in Århus, and you'll see an exhibition of my photographs, and I hope you enjoy them.
Sure will. Thanks a lot.